Hey everyone, and welcome to the Magical Miracle Network. My name is Ruth Perkinson, and I'm so happy all of you are here with me today. The holiday season. I have an amazing spirit with me today. His name is Nathaniel Mason, and I've known him for a very long time. We have quite the history together, not only I think in this lifetime, but maybe in many others. And
Yes.
he's here with us today to bring his wisdom forth, his joy, his humor about his journey with A Course in Miracles, because we're doing a video series on A Course in Miracles testimonials, how people got to the course, how they approached the course, and then what they're doing with it now. So, Nathaniel, thank you so much for saying yes to coming on today.
Yes, of course. I'm so happy to be here. It's an honor. I feel the energy hit.
Me too. I know we were talking about that before we hit record. Oftentimes
Yes.
we get together and we just feel this beautiful stream of love come through, don't we?
It feels so good. It feels so good in my body. And so I'm just so excited to be here and to give this message out to people.
Absolutely. Well, let's just kind of start with the past a little bit.
Sure.
And we'll go about 20, maybe 30 minutes, whatever feels right. And talk about your journey. You are a young professor at St. Bonaventure University,
Hmm.
and you've had quite the journey to get there. So, do you want to kind of just go back and just organically talk about your experience coming, through college and kind of how you were coming into A Course in Miracles? Just start wherever you want to start, and we'll have fun.
That sounds great. Yeah, that's a great question. I grew up like a lot of us in a sort of a byproduct of the 80s televangelist movement, where my parents were really into, I would say, evangelical Christianity. And I'm lucky to have still a good relationship with them now. And they've eased up a little bit over the years. But we grew up watching the 700 Club and Pat Robertson and going to church most Sundays and on Christmas and Easter. And there was always a part of me that knew there was an element of this that felt right, but there was a lot of other stuff that I just didn't pay attention to. One really strong example is my dad's dad was a lifelong smoker and had COPD, lung cancer, was in and out of the hospital to the point where he should have had like a punch card. I mean, it was like a frequent flyer miles with him. And he'd probably think that's funny if he was still with us in his bodily form. And there was a time at church, I'll never forget this, where they asked us, for anyone who needs a prayer, to stand up, and the congregation would put their hands on you and they would just pray. Like they wouldn't even say anything out loud. They would just pray. And my dad stood up, and because his dad was probably on his final like 6 months or so. And I just remember the feeling of having people who loved and cared about you so much like course through you, and something shifted in me. Something was like, oh, this is the church. This is the real church. It's not this building. It is not the pews. It is not the sacraments or the rituals. It's like people coming, putting their hand on you, holding you up in love, and you realizing, no, really, it's okay.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful, Nathaniel.
Oh,
Wow.
thank you.
How
Thank
how,
you.
how old were you when this was going on?
I had to be 7 years old.
Oh
I had to
wow.
be like 7 years old.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
And yes, it was just so particularly poignant. I mean, I still remember it to this day. Like I can remember what the room looked like, where we were sitting. I could probably tell you whereabouts we were sitting.
Mhm.
And kind of from there, it felt like my life was a little bit on pause. I would pray. I always loved Psalm 23.
Oh
I had a
yes.
lot of anxiety growing up. I was
Yeah.
highly sensitive, had a lot of anxiety, a lot of just like built up nervousness about things that could go wrong.
Right.
And my dad told me, this was probably even before this happened or right after, that Psalm 23 is really helpful. Like his grandmother really loved it.
Yeah.
And so I would read it and just feel,
Oh, so interesting. And just so I'm clear with the viewer, Psalm 23 is yea, that I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I fear no evil.
Yes.
Is that the one? Okay, just so listeners can understand where you're coming from. That's a beautiful
Yes.
psalm. Okay, keep going. That's beautiful.
Yeah, you nailed it. I'm so glad you brought that up. It's this beautiful one about the Lord is my shepherd. And it is, again, it focuses on peace, it focuses on being taken care of. And that resonated with me. Um, Kind of fast forward a little bit in high school into college, I was coming to terms with, I think, being queer. I was coming to terms with what I thought about religion. And I took a bit of a backseat. I took a bit of a backseat.
Yeah, that makes
I would,
sense. Yeah.
I think a
Mhm.
lot of us do. A lot of us take a bit of a backseat during that time. And I would sometimes go to Catholic Mass, and I actually enjoyed that.
Right.
And I remember I took a class on Judaism my final year of college. And there was the teachings of Kabbalah, like Kabbalistic mysticism.
Mhm.
And I had another energetic hit when I was reading that. And it was like, pay attention to this, was basically what my higher self was saying.
Yes. Oh, that's so interesting. You had like that sort of a mystical moment there,
So many.
kind of
Yes.
pinging back to like when you were 7, you were like having that sort of mystical moment there with that's what the church was. And then going forward, just really, and I think that that's the key there is you had that awareness, right? You had that awareness that something was really there. Yeah.
That's a great point. Yes, I had the awareness that it was there. And I think for some people, it's a subtle thing, but for me, it's like kind of loud because that's how I pay attention to it. Like pay attention to this. Like, notice how this makes you feel, see how this feels in alignment with what you believe. And I think the message of Kabbalistic Judaism is like God is in everything and everywhere all at once,
Yeah.
essentially, is like one of the tenets of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
let's see. I end up after college dating someone that is the first guy I've officially dated. And what's interesting is I actually connected with him recently and tried to clear a lot of karma with that.
Yeah. Good for you.
But thank you. But I remember telling my parents about him. They had to process it and they finally accepted it. And it was ironically kind of after that time where I noticed he just started becoming kind of distant. And, at some point, inevitably, the breakup happened, which a lot of people aren't surprised probably to hear who are watching
Right.
this.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
23, it happens.
Right. So just for clarity's sake, is that when you actually came out to your parents? Is when you were dating
It
this?
sure was. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's a big one, right? That's a big one. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. Thank you for acknowledging that. It was a huge one. And, for anyone who's maybe queer watching this or has someone in their life that is, I hope that they can take the example of my parents having to have their reaction, put it to the side, and still love me unconditionally and say that whoever I love is always welcome.
Oh, let's just hit the pause button right there,
Sure.
and really acknowledge I'm actually getting emotional. And
I
because
know.
I think most beings probably know on this channel that I'm also gay, queer,
Mm-hmm.
lesbian, whatever. And when you come out to your parents, um, it's really, it's very challenging. And
Yes.
and their reaction from your vantage point seemed pretty miraculous, how they just parked their whatever they were feeling about it and really continued to just love you. That's really beautiful.
Thank you for saying miraculous because I think that is actually why A Course in Miracles resonates with me so much. It says in the beginning that you're entitled to miracles. And I feel like I've had so many miracles in my life, like those moments.
Oh gosh, let's talk about the miracles. Let's talk about,
Yes.
yeah, let's talk about, yes, there's a beautiful lesson in A Course in Miracles that says you are entitled to miracles. You're
Mm-hmm.
entitled to the love, the expression of love, the healing with love, the reparation. And I think every day we're either experiencing the miracle or we're not. It's like we're in
Yes.
that zone of the miracle or we're not in that. We're in the zone of the ego and the grief and the grievance. So, do you want to just maybe talk a little bit about some of those miracles you've experienced, like when you were 7 with your parents? But I also want to continue that story about the gentleman you were dating. If that's, I'll let you just take
Totally.
over there. Yeah.
Because that I think isn't a good example of a miracle where so he broke up with me. I was devastated. I went home, and after all the big emotions I had, I remember sitting up that night and I said to myself, and I'll never forget, I know which chair I was sitting in. I know what it looked like out the back door of my parents' door leading out to their deck. Like I can see it right now. I said, something's got to change.
Yes.
I
Yes.
was so tired of being in the world without having a sense of purpose or paying attention to a power that knows much more than I do.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I have to go. I have to go back to God. I really do.
Wow. So it was like that dark night of the soul, right? Where you're going through this really, really, because breakups can really, really rock people's worlds. It's
Yes.
rocked my world from time to time. I've had bad breakups. And so you're having that dark night of the soul, but there seemed to be a crack of light there, right?
That's a beautiful way to put it. Yes, there was a crack of light, and then a series of events happened, which all kind of were in a sped up process of when they occurred, which has been kind of a theme in my life when I invite in that higher power. I'm not attached to it, but things tend to happen very quickly.
Yes. All right. Tell us what happened then. This is cool.
Yeah.
Keep going. This is a beautiful story. Yes.
So I started getting what I call almost like inspirations or like mental downloads to write. And I ended up writing like dozens of pages during that time, just about my journey, what I was feeling, my thoughts about God, my thoughts about coming back to God. And I actually, for those who don't know, there is a beautiful book that Ruth wrote
Oh,
during that time. It's Spirit Home, right?
yes.
And
I'll pay you later.
yes, no problem. It is a
I'll pay you
wonderful book
later.
on A Course in Miracles and Spirituality, and I highly encourage anyone to read it. And I had actually, to back up a little bit, run into Ruth and her wife that summer before the breakup happened at a pharmacy where I was working, where she came in to get something. And it was this beautiful encounter because she had been my teacher 2 times in middle school, which a lot of people are always tickled to hear, and I never get tired of telling. In the 6th grade and the 8th grade, and that school's a forgiveness lesson, but we're going to let that go. That whole program's a forgiveness lesson. And
Yes.
it was just so much work. And I ran back into her, and it was so good seeing her. And something inside me said, go look at her books. She's a published author, and get in contact with her if you can. So I said, okay. And I remember like the fall light coming in the afternoons, and I would just be reading. And I was so thankful that someone understood. I was so grateful and thankful that there were stories about what it felt like to feel lost,
Mhm.
to get back into truth, and just
Mhm.
someone saying it like it is, not a lot of airy fairy fluff, just very much like this is how it felt. I was so grateful for that.
Oh, thank you, Nathaniel. I'm receiving your gratitude. That's lovely to hear. Thank you.
Yes, you're so welcome. And then I reached out to you, and we ended up having a couple emails back and forth. I do still remember the first email that you responded to, where you just validated everything I was feeling. And it finally felt like I was getting like a long awaited warm hug from the universe that, like, you don't have to suffer. Your life is not about breakups, that it's not about having to feel so flipping lost. And I was so not only just grateful, but I said like, it was a miracle moment. It was like, no, this was the right thing. This is a sign. Your body's giving you a sign that you did the right thing with this feeling. And we started talking. We had a hilarious and fun meeting at a Starbucks off of Knuckles Road, which I
Yes.
think has now changed locations, but it's still just about in the same place. And You said, "Hey, I'm starting this group. It's called A Course in Miracles. Let me tell you a little bit about it." I had already heard about it through her book, and a couple of spiritual teachers that I was reading around that time had mentioned it. But I jumped in January of 2015. There was a beautiful church down off Laburnum Avenue that I think you not only worked at, but attended with Heather
Right.
at the
Yes.
time.
Yes.
And we started our Saturday meetings, and talk about a breath of fresh air to get up on a Saturday after a long week where things can feel really heavy, and work and life and, just all the things that can trigger us. We get to release it, we get to heal it, but we get to talk about like authentically how it made us feel,
Mhm.
and go to this text that's really designed to be more practical than anything. Um,
Absolutely.
that's I'm going to pause there. I feel guided to pause there.
Absolutely. Well, just as you were talking about all of that, I was honestly getting emotional, and I so appreciate you bringing that up. I wasn't expecting that, and that just feels so loving and so kind. I really appreciate that. We do have a long
Of
history
course.
together, and I remember I had gotten out of the prison system. I was working in the prison system that summer of 2002, and decided I needed to leave. It was just not a right fit for me. And I went back to teaching in the county and in Rico. And I remember my second day back to teaching, you were in my class. I remember you speaking of how you can see things like
Mm-hmm.
energetically, I can still to this day, not even knowing what your name was, I was
Mm-hmm.
standing outside of my classroom, I think holding my cup of coffee that I was always holding, right? And I remember watching this beautiful young man at 11 years old, you,
Yes.
and you had your wheelie backpack. I feel like you were just coming down, you were coming down the hallway. And I was like, who is this bright shining star? And I had no idea, of course, neither one of us did at that time, that we
Wow.
would start our own lifelong journey together, and that, I would be there in your sixth grade year, your eighth grade year, before I left. And then we would kind of disconnect for a little while as you went through high school and college, and then having this reconnection back in 2014 slash
Yes.
2015 was really so beautiful. And so, for all of you guys listening, the Holy Spirit really does bring us, I feel like what you were saying, the right people at the right time. You were definitely the right person for me, because you really lit up my classroom. You were always making us laugh. We were just having such a good time. And it was, yeah, I think that was a forgiveness opportunity for a lot of us in that time. And so I'm just so grateful that, we kind of we're together again. And we spent some time together that year, back then, talking about A Course in Miracles. We were talking through it. I was new. I'd only been doing it for a few years. And we were kind of like having those classes on Saturday to sort of talk through the material.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's just kind of talk about how that was working for you. And then I think this is kind of coming into my mind right now, because you were actually in a program to become a doctor, a medical doctor, and then everything
Yes.
shifted that year for you, right? And you decided to go to William and Mary, into that master's program and doctoral program. So talk about like how that all those shifts were happening. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
I would love to. I'm so glad you brought that up and highlighted that.
Yeah.
So, when I graduated from college, I
And
thought,
he's a UVA grad, by the way. I just want to say that.
yeah, it's big classes and a lot of money, but it was still fun.
Yes.
Um, so when I graduated from college, they have these like certificate programs that you can do at some schools and VCUs. Actually, the program was very good. It was like a pre-health sciences program where you took the requirements to go to medical school. I thought I wanted to be a psychiatrist. I thought I wanted to do psychiatric care and medical management and diagnoses and treatment. And I was doing really well in the classes, but this is also when I was dating that guy
Right.
during that time. And not only did our relationship end up separating and changing form, and I say that very purposely because that's what A Course in Miracles says about relationships. not only did that happen, but my program, I decided I opened an organic chemistry. It was like a textbook or a workbook or something. And I was going through it, and there's all these hexagons and oh my God, carbons and hydrogens and all that. And I just said to myself, can I cuss on this channel?
Go for it. I think yeah, nobody's gonna go for it. Yes. Go for
Perfect.
it. Yes.
I said to myself, I don't fucking care about this. I just was so honest with myself. I was like, I don't care. I don't care. This is not the path for me. And I stopped school and I got some of my money back. And that's when all of the stuff happened at once. I found a job on Craigslist, which was doing in home counseling for individuals living in the lower income parts of Richmond. I ended up, while I didn't necessarily love every aspect of that job, the clients I served were amazing. And I had another miracle moment where I was meeting with one of my clients for the final time before we discharged him. And I was going through like all the things we had talked about, and he was able to list them, every single one, almost to a T. And I had no idea he had been listening the whole time.
Oh, wow.
I had no idea,
Right.
because that just shows you the power of when you give someone presence
Mhm.
and you're the right person at the right time, like they receive it, they listen.
Yes.
I met a friend at that job who I would keep in contact with, who told me about another job. That other job was working in a school, at a charter school in Richmond, where I was doing kind of classroom based interventions and sort of counseling light, I call it. This was around
Yes.
2015, just about half a year after I had started the course group with you and reconnected with you.
Mhm.
And then when I was doing that job, randomly, I met somebody who I think was only in my life to tell me this piece of information. But I started looking at programs around that time just to see, like, did I want a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling? And I was almost sure, like, I was supposed to go to JMU. Their James Madison, their handbook was so cool, and it's the first thing that resonated with me. And it talked about personal growth and all that. And this person I randomly was sitting next to in like a professional development meeting one day said, well, where William and Mary has a program. And I said, what? I was like, there's no way. I didn't know that. I would have known that. No,
Yes.
of course, she graduated from there. She's right. It existed.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And I said, all right, I guess I'll apply there. As fate would have it, I went all the way up to James Madison one afternoon after taking a half day of work and had one of the most awkward, uncomfortable meetings with a professor I've ever had. And I was like, oh no, maybe this is the wrong fit.
Right. Right.
No, it wasn't. It was the wrong place.
Right. So you really got that energetically. That was not the right place. You just felt it. It was just, yeah.
Off. Yes, it was off. It was off. Yes, I definitely felt it. And I ended up applying to William and Mary. And funny enough, I think there was one of the biggest snowstorms we've ever had in Richmond that January.
Mhm.
And it was just starting to snow. And Ruth, who's I'm talking to, and Heather ended up driving all the way to where you were working at St. Thomas, where we had the course meetings at the time, to print out or finish or save or something with my recommendation letter. And you said you had like this strong urge to be able to do it.
Yeah, it was really weird. I'll just, if I can, I'll just jump in just for a
Please
minute.
do. Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah, it was really interesting because all of a sudden we were having this huge snowstorm, and I was like, he needs this recommendation letter to William and Mary because you had asked me to do it. And at that time, I didn't have my files at home, and it was due, I think, like that evening or that day or something. And because it was kind of like a very fast switching from JMU, I think, to William and Mary, right? It was kind of like this had to. So Heather and I were literally in a blizzard driving down 295 to get to St. Thomas, which is about 20 minutes from here, down in off Laburnum Avenue. And I was able to get into the church because I'd written up something there, and I had to finish it to send it off to William and Mary. Yes, and that was so we took our lives. We were just, I think we got to get this done. He needs to go to William and Mary. So yeah.
Yes, I'm so grateful that they risked their lives in the terrible snow-covered streets of Richmond, which nobody knows down here what to do with that. And and then the rest is history. I got in an hour and a half later,
Yeah.
hour and a half, out a week and a half later, not an hour and a half. That would have been
Yeah.
miraculous.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So a week and a half later, you get into William and Mary and you start that master's
Yes.
program. Oh,
And it was the
delightful.
right fit. Everything was right about it. It's where I ended up on the first day of graduate orientation meeting my now husband. It's where I started on a career that I feel so passionate about. It's where I found out where I would not only be doing my master's program, but my doctoral program in counselor education and supervision. And it's where I solidified a lot of kind of who I am now and how I think I'm called to serve on earth. And not only am I grateful, but I just am so in awe of being able to step into that alignment and following the popcorn trail of one friend recommending this one job, introducing me to this other person who randomly talks about William and Mary. And then from there, I really think it's following the popcorn trail. So when I say mystical moments, it's like those that you find that kernel of popcorn on the forest path and you
Mhm.
think this is in alignment, this is correct. And even though I don't know everything that's going to happen next, I know I'm in the right direction.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That's really a pivotal phrase there. Even though you don't see everything that's going to be unfolding for
Yes.
you, you really knew 100%, right, that you were on the right path.
Yes.
Yeah. And you just kept having faith in that, trusting that you were going in that direction. And don't you feel, and we'll talk about this a little bit as we're doing A Course in Miracles, that the Holy Spirit is kind of course correcting us as we move through our life, right? It's like going over here.
Oh my
No, that's not the right
gosh.
fit. Let's go over here. It's just like, it's this beautiful myriad of miracles really that are happening. And that, you've done enough work in your lifetime. You don't need to go through that again. You've done the forgiveness, the spiritual work. Let's go ahead and move
Yes.
here. You're almost like shifting dimensions of time and space as you're moving through your lifetime. And that's so sweet to hear because all those beautiful things that happened. And if you had gone to JMU, which felt awkward and like how that would have worked out compared to how it's worked out for you now. So,
Yes.
wow. So anyway, so you've been doing A Course in Miracles and you are now this beautiful professor at St. Bonaventure University. And
Mhm.
how's that going for you? How is your professor life going now and your counseling and your teaching? Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. I love my clients. I love most of my students, and even the ones that might trigger something in me because I'm not above getting triggered. And I really want to be crystal clear that sometimes I've heard people who are on these paths and maybe they're just less reactionary, more evolved than me, but I still get triggered like everyone else.
Yes, me too. Yes.
Thank you for
Yeah.
we're just going to put that out there. We're
Yeah,
human.
I get triggered every day. I mean, like, why am I thinking that? That's a weird thought. Or, why did they say
Right.
that? It's like, okay. And so, yeah, the ego is really tricky at triggering us, but having the awareness that that's what it is like the first part of the miracle.
Yes. Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I think that my favorite part about teaching and seeing clients and doing research is like when I get into this flow state of whatever I'm doing at the moment. A lot of times, and this comes from a lifelong planner, I will just like abandon ship with some of the plans that I had for that day because I'll listen to like, this is where the guidance is telling me in the moment. Like this person on this call, this student needs to hear this instead, say this instead. And I don't even know where it comes from.
Yes, it's
Yes.
coming from your higher guidance, your higher self, right? That higher wisdom. And it really sounds like you're thinking with the Holy Spirit and just knowing what the right, because those thoughts will come through, right? Okay, this thought's coming through to go this way instead of that way. And abandoning your plans. I used to do that as a teacher. I'd be like, okay, this is not what we're doing today. We're not going to do, subject verb agreement. We're going to be talking about our feelings around writing or this story that's coming up or this. Yeah,
Yes.
it's really, I think, helpful when it's okay, it's okay to do that, to veer off the path and go in a direction that's right for you and for that being in front of you.
That's such a nice way of saying it. And I think it doesn't even have to be like this really like life-changing message. It could be something as simple as like me asking a student, like, well, what did that bring up in you? When you were with this client, what did that bring up in you? And that's part of their healing.
Right.
Just like when
Exactly.
people have asked me that question, that's part of my healing.
Right.
And the same thing with my clients. I have so much respect and care and just admiration for them for giving all of that time and that money and that energy to
Mhm.
letting what essentially used to be a complete stranger, me, like help them in their
Oh,
journey.
yeah.
It's just it's something that goes beyond beautiful. I can't describe it, but I do think, similar to what you were saying earlier, I do think clients have come into my life at the right time, and maybe vice versa, to
Yeah.
teach each other something. And I do learn from my clients all the time.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things in the psychotherapy pamphlet of A Course in Miracles. And I know you've been through the book and you've studied it. In the psychotherapy pamphlet, it talks about how, you've got the psychotherapist and the patient, and that
Yes.
truly what's happening there is that the Holy Spirit is in charge of the healing. And so I often say sometimes to my clients, or friends even, that the Holy Spirit really is the expert in the room,
Yes.
and oftentimes brings us people or clients that are reflecting sometimes things in our own life, and we see that that's a healing, right? And to have that awareness, I think, is very important, not to be like, this is the way, but the Holy Spirit really is bringing us those people to help clear the grievances, clear whatever it might be. And I really love that. So I just thought I would share that the psychotherapy pamphlet is so good,
It is so good. And I think it does kind of take away some of that like power dynamic you see a lot when we talk
Yes.
about therapists and, client.
Oh, yes. I love that. That just even you putting that up there like that is
Mm-hmm.
that when the client and the therapist come together, it should be of an equal opportunity to heal, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the mind, because we're really what we're doing with the Course in Miracles is a course in mind training. We're really healing the split mind, not only at a macro level, but at the sort of micro level where we appear to be. And as we attend to that each and every day, those miracles are really happening, and the Holy Spirit's in charge of all of that, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And I think one thing that's easy in the ego form of jobs to do is to get, like, I find myself sometimes wanting to be really impatient or, answer an email really quickly without a lot of either compassion or thoughtfulness. And so it's a lesson that I think the universe, that source has kind of brought to me to say, slow down, always lead with kindness, and always lead with curiosity and compassion. And you will be not even rewarded, but like the best outcome will happen.
Oh, Nathaniel, I'm writing all this down. Yes, I love that. That's kind of a note we can sort of maybe even end the interview on, is just
Yes,
having people. This is a golden nugget coming out of I think, the course teachings, and to lead with kindness and compassion, and really holding space with an email, holding space with a conversation. And I love the idea that you talked about curiosity, and to be curious about continued curiosity in your life and how things are unfolding for you. That's so well said. So I love talking to you. Is it okay to ask you now if we can bring you on maybe once a month or once every 6 weeks to have conversations around the course and any golden
would.
nuggets you can offer people out there?
Oh my goodness, I would love that. I was gonna say, if there was a chance I could come on at least another time. It feels like we just hit the tip of the iceberg, but I think it's happened exactly the way it should.
Absolutely. I thank you. Yes, I would love to have you on once a month, because I think, I'll be honest right now before we close out. I had to come to you a couple years ago because I was dealing with a younger client, and I'm getting a chill actually saying this. And he was struggling, I feel, with his sexuality. I've got clients all age ranges, but I knew that I didn't have the information I needed to help this person. So I remember I reached out to you and I
Mm-hmm.
said, I really don't know how to handle this. It's out of my wheelhouse. You're the psychotherapist, you're the psychologist, you're the teacher, and can you help me? And I remember, I might cry. I remember you gave me some really great information. And I was able to study that information that you gave me, and I was able to impart this wisdom through you to this other being. And I really feel like it saved his life.
Oh, isn't that why we're
And
here?
that's why we're here, And I've had challenges with, in my lifetime and with all kinds of stuff. But I really felt in my heart and mind that we saved this young man's life. And so I just really wanted to give you a shout out, as you've given me a
Mm,
shout out in this interview, and let you know that we are all on this network, this magical miracle network. We are all supporting each other, and really letting everyone know that there is a beauty in that support. There's a beauty in the kindness, the compassion. And I'm just going to put this book up because this book actually truly saved my life in so
yes.
many different ways. And it is, the miracle is forgiveness, the miracle is love, the miracle is support and kindness, all those things. Oh my gosh, Nathaniel, we're going to have you back on hopefully once a month for you to be our in-house expert on psychology, our in-house expert on joy and love and light. Anything you want to say before we close out today?
Yes, I would love to say, first of all, thank you for this platform and doing this work. It is so important. So we are so grateful for you for all the labor. I don't think people realize how much labor she puts in behind the scenes with this. That's number one. And number two is there's this belief in the spiritual community sometimes that we have to always say yes to everything. But the most loving response we can do sometimes is self advocating and saying, no, thank you, not now, or I'm okay.
Wow. Yes. So lovely. I totally agree with you. That's a great note to end on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for being the light of the world, and thank you for being a miracle worker, and thank you for advocating for all of us. And I so appreciate your talents, your gifts, and your abilities. So everybody, please be patient with me as I find the stop button here. And Nathaniel, I'll give you the last word.
Be safe, be well, be happy. And Bill Thetford, who helped scribe the course, said, don't forget to laugh. Don't forget to laugh.
Exactly. I love you.